Hello and welcome to our presentation. I'm Chris Meadows, principal at Magoffin County High School, and we are an ACT school. Presenting with me today will be our assistant principal, Brian Conley, and our lead math teacher, Jennifer Howard. We would like to acknowledge some of the people that have helped us along the way this year. Jennifer Carroll, the ACT grant lead at KVEC, and we also had the good fortune of being paired up with the Regional Education Laboratory, REL, and worked with Ryoko Yamaguchi and Kathleen Dempsey. This is our theory of action, and as you can see, it's pretty extensive. When we first started our work this year, we had two main questions that we were looking at that we'll see a little more clearly on the next slide. But this theory of action looks at the inputs that we already had in place, and then what each individual group, whether it be administrators, teachers, students, and so forth, would contribute to the project. The two questions that guided our thinking initially were, how might we create an atmosphere where our students feel that they are part of a caring and engaging learning environment daily? And then secondly, how might we as educators monitor and provide for student needs beyond assessment? And some of the things that we looked at as we planned for this project were that we are seeing increases in students that don't live with either biological parent. Many of our students are living with grandparents or other family members. We are starting to see increase in foster students as well. We have a chronic absenteeism problem at our school. We have a large number of students that qualify for free or reduced meals that are economically disadvantaged. And we have many students that go directly to an after-school job when they leave our school each day. We also wanted to look at the number of students that are transition ready, because ultimately that is our goal, to make sure that students do leave us ready for post-secondary, whatever that might be. And then we also looked at the number of students that needed credit recovery and those that also needed those social and emotional intervention. The first thing that we wanted to do was to create a sense of belonging. And what we have on this slide are some pictures of basically three of the main things that we did this year to help create that sense of belonging in our school. The first two pictures on the top there that you'll see our students wearing a gray Magoffin t-shirt. And on the first day of school, every student was given one of these shirts. We wanted everyone to feel part of the school. When we have school spirit days, we wanted for every student to feel like that they had something that they could wear to feel part of us as a school. And you'll see all of those kids on the third day of school there in the gym, everyone wearing their Magoffin shirt that day. We had a pep rally to just kind of unite. We celebrated our seniors that day. And I can say that the t-shirt has probably been one of the better things that we've done for an entire student body. Every single day after that day, I couldn't tell you how many shirts I see on those kids. They really appreciated them and have certainly worn them throughout the year. The next two pictures that you'll see are two young ladies holding shirts, and beneath them are some students with instruments. We started a club day this year to make sure that all students felt like they had a place that they fit. And the t-shirts, those girls actually made in the cricket club. And then the students playing the instruments are with our director in a small ensemble music group. And we added probably 30 plus clubs this year, had a club day every month, so that students had a place that they felt like that they truly fit in the building. The last two pictures, birthday cake and some students at one of the birthday parties, we began celebrating student birthdays every month. So in August, we celebrated those students that had July and August birthday. And we didn't want to overlook high school students at their birthday, so we wanted to include everyone there. They also received a birthday card from the school at the party. When we got paired up with REL, they actually came to our school in the fall, and we had a face-to-face meeting. All the meetings after that were virtual, but we partnered with them, and they helped us to refine our problem statement and to kind of narrow that focus. So on that day, we came up with the fact that students are not prepared for the social, emotional, and academic rigors of post-secondary schools because they are chronically absent from high school. Through that work with REL, we began to work on a framework or a different graphic of our theory of action. And on this particular slide, you will see our short-term outcomes and those long-term outcomes. The short-term included that students would increase their sense of belonging in school, and the students would improve attendance in school. Long-term outcomes would be that students would improve academic achievement and that students would improve transition readiness to prepare for the rigors of college and career readiness. As we worked, we did review some research about chronic absenteeism. And one of the first things that we read actually back in the summer was that many students, especially high school students, don't attend regularly because they don't feel like they belong. They don't have that sense of belonging. Hence our reason for creating the club day, celebrating all of their birthdays, providing them with shirts so that we all have a common ground there. But we also looked at emotional health and safety, the academic challenges and engagement, along with adult and student social and emotional competence.
Okay. We are in dealing with the attendance issues at Magoffin County High School. Of course, naturally, you can speculate always about why students are missing so much school. REL suggested to us that we do something called student empathy interviews, where we just simply ask the students why they themselves are not coming to school. So we made some decisions about who we should interview. And we chose 16 students based on attendance data. And 5 of those students were students who always come to school. So we wanted to hear about why that was the case. And 11 of those 16 students were students who are chronically absent. Our empathy interview questions, we had 3 questions for these 16 students, and they were very open-ended questions, questions that allowed them to just talk candidly about why they come to school regularly or do not come to school regularly. And you see our 3 empathy interview questions there. Tell me one great experience you had in school. Tell me about a day you didn't want to come to school. And tell me about a recent time you were absent from school. And these were eye-opening discussions. I know Mr. Meadows and Mrs. Howard and I all talked about what we were able to learn from these students. And we have 2 themes here that came out of some of those conversations. One of the first themes was, and this was stated by one of our students that was interviewed, I get to do what I do best at school. And that was his reasoning for having good attendance. For a student who was chronically absent, he had always had problems. He had to do odd jobs all the time to keep up repairs with his truck. So we were learning that sometimes kids had to miss school or were missing school because they had to, unfortunately, prioritize some other things in their lives that kind of took precedence over school, even though that shouldn't be the case, like transportation. So we had the one kid who was always having to work on his truck. But in dealing with that, those were the things that he loved to do. And in our tech school, in our career tech center, those were the times where he got to do things that related to working on a truck, and he liked that part of it. We had kids that commented on club day, that one of the best things about coming to school was club day. So that kind of reinforced and encouraged us that we were on the right track with coming up with more clubs. As Mr. Meta said, we added about 30 clubs to our school. And so you have the comment there about the one student, one of the best days of school is the days of the after school clubs. and this was coming from a ninth grader, and that student had said, "That's the day I get to be my nerd self." We had some clubs that allowed students to really find their niche, if you want to say. We had a Dungeons and Dragons club. We had a chess club. We had different clubs where students got to feel like they were assembling with other students who were like them and liked the same things that they liked. Then you have, we had one of our themes that came out of those interviews was the family. Many students interviewed had jobs that they had to support their family. So after school jobs were a part of it as well, or jobs during the school day, unfortunately. Caring for sick family members. And then we have some students, and this plays into some of the things that we'll learn later about what we were wanting to do with our student engagement team. We have some students that have a lot of anxiety issues, and school's just a place where they were really stressed. School's worth coming to when a student can focus on being a kid who learns content, who can have fun, play, and engage. We learned that as well.
So we wanted to address a couple of things in our plan with the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle. And we decided to identify some focus strategies to go through the cycle. And we wanted to basically look at instructional engagement and make sure that our students are engaged and have some content that is meaningful to them each day at school.
And then the second part of that plan, identifying a focused grade level to go through this PDSA cycle. We've been a school that's been implementing the BAR model for the past 3 years, the Building Assets Reducing Risk model that originally came out of a school in Minneapolis. And Mr. Meadows and I had spoken about this at different times about how we wanted to pilot that into our upper grades. And as part of contributing to that, creating a sense of belonging, we know that one way that you can create a sense of belonging is to give students and teachers more opportunities to build stronger relationships with one another. And that's one of the things that would come from this BAR model, which is a tracking system for students. We decided to focus on 10th graders, and we just piloted a part of this. It was an abbreviated version, and we didn't focus on the entire 10th grade class nor all of our 10th grade teachers, but we only focused on math. But we developed a team with our 10th grade math teachers in which they had some students who, I guess you could say, were on their tracking caseload, that they were to build relationships with and to help these students along academically, but not only academically, but socially and emotionally.
So our first strategy focused on, like he mentioned, the 10th grade geometry teachers and their use of formative assessment in class. And we implemented the plan was to implement some professional development on how to use the formative assessment effectively to improve the student engagement in the lessons and in the units we are. And we wanted to make sure that kids had a chance to track their own learning, to develop some ownership of where they were and where they needed to go and what they needed to do to get there.
And as part of the student engagement team, those 10th grade geometry teachers, they drafted 8 sophomores apiece, and they were asked to choose students whom they felt like were needing some help, were facing some challenges, whether those be attendance and academic challenges or whether those be social challenges, in hopes of developing a stronger partnership, a stronger student-teacher partnership with them, and helping those students to recognize that there are staff members in the building who care about them, and in hopes of creating more of that connectedness with the school. And in that student engagement piece on that team, our teachers had data at their fingertips. They had attendance data for each of those students who were on their caseload. They had their academic data, their grades, and how they were performing on diagnostics achievement tests, such as the CERT exam, which is a predictor for how students would do on the ACT. So teachers had a lot at their disposal to use for data in choosing their students and also working with their students to set short-term goals in helping those kids along.
So when you look at this graphic here, you can see how within the instructional engagement piece, how we're going to connect over there to teachers improving the academic engagement and rigor in instruction. You can see the formative assessment PD, and obviously we're going to enact the practices that we learn about formative assessment, which should lead to teachers, improving their instruction and students being more engaged in the content.
Okay, this is the same graphic except looking at the other domain. In this one, we are looking at how the student engagement piece would be used to contribute to that short-term outcome of increasing student partnerships and connections and improving that sense of belonging for the students, and hopefully improving their attendance, which ultimately would lead to improving their academic achievements and hopefully leading to being transition ready, college ready, or career ready coming out of high school.
So with the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, you can see there for formative assessment, the implementation piece is where we would meet in a PLC and really dig into what it means to really use formative assessment to guide instruction, how to communicate those learning goals to the students. And also we took a look at the geometry test, the 10th grade test blueprint, just to make sure that our students have a curriculum, that they have opportunities to learn everything that is expected of them before they take that 10th grade test, and just to really look at the curriculum pieces that we have, our scope and sequence. Are we really providing the units that our students need by the end of their 10th grade year? And also, once we learned about that, we looked at the formative assessments for in the midst of some units. And obviously with so much that has happened with our plan, flu days, we didn't get as far here, but the plan was to collect some student feedback, discuss that in our PLC, and use that to change our next lessons and just to inform that instruction as we move forward. And for our data and measures of outcome, we were going to have our meeting logs, our artifacts from our formative assessments, and the changes that were made in our lesson plans. And the student outcome would be that the students would just change over time the way they ask questions in their class, and hopefully developed a greater ownership of their own learning.
With the implementation of the student engagement team, each of these 10th grade geometry teachers were asked each week to be intentional about their connections with their 8 students that they had selected. Each of them had selected 8 students. Intentional in terms of making sure that they spoke with these students, making sure that they, in a caring and compassionate way, spoke with these students about some of the challenges that they saw that student was having, that they were intentional about reaching out to the families and the parents during these weeks. And then every 2 weeks, these 10th grade geometry teachers would come together for a meeting to discuss the progress of their caseloads, which 8 students would have been on their caseloads. And in doing that, in those meetings, they were using a monitoring tracker where each of them were able to put in data on their students, their areas of concerns, the goal that they had developed with that student in partnership with that student, the intervention strategies that they were trying, and any other notes that they had. And then our measures, of course, two measures that we're hoping, two pieces of data and results that we were hoping that would come from these engagement teams. One is a teacher outcome. At each of these bi-weekly meetings, we ask that teachers reflect on how their practices in the classroom are changing as well, and how the student engagement team was causing a change in that practice, maybe in how they just build relationships with students in general. So they were asked to fill out a reflection log at these bi-weekly meetings. And then, of course, student outcomes. Teachers had the opportunity in these tracking forms to document how the student was changing, whether it was improved CERT scores or whether it was improved grades or improved attendance. They could put this in as a student outcome measure in that form.
So after looking at our data, you know, we were unable to collect a whole lot of data on the formative assessment piece simply because the structure, the way the semester has been with absences, well, not absences, but with our school being called off for flu and different other events for flood, and of course now the COVID-19. So our next steps as far as the formative assessment would be for us to continue our plan and to make sure that we get back, that we take a look at our curriculum, develop units together, plan those formative assessment pieces, collect our data from our students, and reflect and just improve on our lessons as we had planned.
And of course, our next steps with the student engagement team, as Jennifer had already pointed out, we didn't get to see a lot of things come to fruition in the spring semester because of what has happened with the COVID-19 crisis. But our next steps, of course, would be to continue with a tracking, monitoring type system that involves 10th graders, but also to ultimately push this idea of tracking students even into our 11th grade and our 12th grade. You know, the theory of thinking that you can create a sense of belonging by building better relationships with students, that's common sense. And so we want to push that to be a school-wide type implementation eventually, and see that not just only with, of course, our BAR program in our 9th grade, and not only just with a 10th grade piloting system like we tried to do this year.
I think here, if we look at, to sum this slide up, moving forward, I think that we need to focus more on families and our external community. Family contact is established through the student engagement team. But I could see us moving forward, doing what we've been doing, just picking up where we left off, but also running some positive campaigns in our community and with our families about the importance of school attendance. And so when our students are staying at home, to work on those things that they indicated that they were doing through those empathy interviews, to work on a truck or to sit with a sick family member. Maybe if we can connect with the families, the parents and the guardians positively about the importance of them being in school, that they would be more reluctant to allow them to stay home to do those things. Because our students clearly indicated that they enjoyed being at school, they liked what they got to do while they were at school. So we walked away from that really learning that it's not the school that's keeping them from the school. And we need to probably reach out to those families to really underscore that importance of them being at school. It's not just about the school making money off of the student. It's about the student having that true, well-rounded school experience that we all know they deserve and need.